The phone rang at exactly 5:42 on a cold Tuesday morning. I answered, half asleep, expecting another spam call. But instead, I heard my younger brother struggling to hold back tears. "Mom collapsed in the kitchen," he whispered. "The ambulance is taking her to St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come now." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My 82-year-old mother had always been the strongest person I knew. Even after losing my father years earlier, she never complained about living alone. She still baked cookies for the neighborhood kids and insisted on mowing her own lawn. Hearing that she had collapsed felt impossible. I jumped out of bed, threw on the first clothes I could find, grabbed my wallet, and rushed outside. That's when reality hit me. My pickup truck wasn't there. It had been sitting at the repair shop for 3 days because the transmission had completely failed. Only one vehicle was left in the driveway, my wife's SUV. I hurried back inside. She was sitting comfortably at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while drinking coffee. "Honey," I said, trying to stay calm, "Mom has been rushed to the hospital. My truck is still in the shop. Can I please borrow your SUV?" She slowly looked up, completely expressionless. "Didn't you say your meeting starts in 2 hours?" she asked. "Yes, but this can't wait," I replied. She could be fighting for her life. She took another sip of coffee, placed the mug on the table, and quietly said words I'll never forget. "Not my problem." I stared at her, waiting for the smile that never came. "I'll have no way to get to work," she continued. "Figure it out." 28 years of marriage flashed through my mind in a single moment. Every sacrifice, every overtime shift, every vacation I canceled so we could save money, every birthday gift, every anniversary dinner. None of it seemed to matter. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I simply looked at her, nodded once, and said, "Okay." Then I walked out the front door. A rideshare driver picked me up 15 minutes later. During the entire ride to the hospital, I kept staring out the window, wondering how the woman I'd loved for nearly 3 decades could refuse something so simple. During the worst morning of my life, when I arrived, my brother was sitting outside the emergency room with red eyes. He stood up and hugged me before saying, "She's asking for you." Inside the room, Mom looked weak, but she smiled the moment she saw me. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. Those 5 words shattered my heart. I stayed by her bedside the entire day, helping the nurses, speaking with doctors, and making sure she wasn't alone for even a minute. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was my wife. I looked at the screen. Then, I pressed decline. I had no idea that by tomorrow morning, she would call me 38 times. I spent the entire afternoon sitting beside my mother's hospital bed. The doctors explained that she had suffered a minor stroke, but because help arrived quickly, they believed she would recover. Hearing those words felt like someone had lifted a mountain off my shoulders. Mom reached for my hand and smiled. "I kept telling the nurses my son would come," she whispered. "You've never let me down." I smiled back, but inside, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened that morning. Not my problem. Those 4 words echoed in my mind every few minutes. Around 4 p.m., my phone vibrated again. My wife's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. A few seconds later, she called again. Then again, and again. By the time I looked at my phone an hour later, there were already 14 missed calls and several text messages. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Call me immediately." For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about ignoring her. My only responsibility that day was sitting beside the woman who had spent her entire life taking care of me. That evening, my brother offered to stay overnight with Mom, but I refused. "I'll stay," I said. Around midnight, the hospital became quiet. The lights were dim. The machines beeped softly. Mom was finally asleep. I walked into the hallway to stretch my legs and finally checked my phone again. 26 missed calls. More messages had arrived. The first few sounded angry. "You're acting childish. Answer your phone." Then the tone suddenly changed. "Please, call me. Something happened. I really need you." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I locked my phone without replying. For years, every time she needed help, I dropped everything. Every flat tire, every late-night pickup, every emergency. But when my 82-year-old mother needed a ride to the hospital, she had looked me in the eyes and said, "Figure it out." Early the next morning, after barely sleeping, I walked to the hospital cafeteria for coffee. My phone buzzed again. This time, 38 missed calls. I finally listened to one of her voicemails. Her voice was shaking. "Please, call me. Someone broke into the house last night. The police are here. I don't know what to do." I quietly put the phone back into my pocket. Then I whispered the exact same words she had said to me less than 2 hours earlier. "You'll figure it out." Without making a single call, I walked back into my mother's hospital room. When I walked back into my mother's hospital room, she was awake, staring out the window as the morning sunlight filled the room. She smiled the moment she saw me carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You haven't gone home, have you?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "No, I wanted to stay with you." She looked at me for a long moment before saying, "Your father always told me that when people face difficult moments, they reveal who they truly are. Hard times don't change people, they uncover them." Her words stayed with me all day. By the afternoon, Mom was feeling stronger. The doctors were pleased with her progress and said she could probably return home within a couple of days if everything continued improving. My brother stopped by with fresh clothes for me and quietly handed me my house keys. "You should probably check on the house," he said. "The police are finished there." I nodded and finally drove home. The front door was damaged, and a police report was lying on the kitchen counter. A window had been broken during the burglary, but thankfully, most of our valuables were still there. The security alarm had scared the intruders away before they could steal much. My wife was sitting silently in the living room. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. "I've been calling you since yesterday," she said. "I know," I replied calmly. I was terrified. "So was I answered. She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "My 82-year-old mother was lying in an ambulance yesterday morning, and I asked you for one simple favor. You looked me in the eyes and told me it wasn't your problem." The room became completely silent. For the first time in years, she had no excuse, no explanation, no argument. She simply lowered her head. A few moments later, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her quietly before answering. "You're apologizing because you were scared yesterday, not because you hurt me." She immediately began crying. "I made a terrible mistake. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I simply walked upstairs, packed a small travel bag, and came back down." "Where are you going?" she asked, wiping away her tears. "Back to the hospital?" "No, I mean after that." I looked at the front door for a few seconds before answering. "I honestly don't know." That night, while sitting beside my mother's bed again, I realized something I had ignored for years. This wasn't really about one car. It wasn't about one argument. It was about respect. And once respect disappears, love begins to disappear with it. As I looked at my sleeping mother, I quietly made a decision that I never thought I would make after 28 years of marriage. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The next morning, I walked into a lawyer's office carrying nothing but a small folder and 28 years of memories. He listened carefully as I explained everything, from my mother's medical emergency to my wife's cold response and the missed calls that followed. When I finished, he leaned back and quietly said, "This marriage wasn't broken by one argument." That moment only revealed problems that had been growing for years. He was right. Looking back, I realized I had ignored countless signs because I believed love meant sacrificing everything. But love without respect eventually becomes loneliness. I wasn't looking for revenge or a long legal fight. I simply wanted peace. That afternoon, I signed the first divorce papers and left the office feeling lighter than I had in years. Later, I visited my mother at the rehabilitation center. Watching her slowly regain her strength reminded me that I had made the right choice. Family isn't about convenience. It's about showing up when someone needs you the most. Over the next few weeks, my wife tried everything to repair the damage. She apologized through letters, phone calls, and heartfelt messages, admitting she had taken my kindness for granted. Friends encouraged me to give her another chance, saying, "Everyone deserves forgiveness." Eventually, we met at a small coffee shop, where she tearfully said, "If I could relive that morning, I would hand you the car keys without hesitation." I believed she truly regretted her actions, but some mistakes permanently change the way you see someone. I calmly replied, "I forgive you, because I don't want to carry anger for the rest of my life." But forgiveness doesn't automatically rebuild trust. She quietly lowered her head because she already knew my decision. A few months later, our divorce was finalized peacefully. There were no arguments, no courtroom drama, and no bitterness. We divided everything fairly and went our separate ways with respect. My mother made a full recovery, and every Sunday we spent time together, cooking lunch, sharing old memories, and enjoying the simple moments we once took for granted. One afternoon she asked, "Do you regret your decision?" I smiled and answered honestly, "No, losing a marriage was painful. But losing my self-respect would have been even worse." She squeezed my hand and reminded me of something my father used to say: "Peace is worth more than pride." At that moment, I realized the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's building a life where you no longer have to look back. The end.